Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to our big Season 10 review. Joining me with this special look back from Smirking Gun Reviews, it's our very own Rob Stone.
Yeah, it's great to be back in the Walking Dead world after choosing and opting out of this season. But after watching it, I am very excited to talk about this season, the finale, where we're headed, and other little things as well. It should be a blast.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And of course, Deborah, right here, straight off in the chat. Hey, Deborah, I'm glad you're avoiding our vice presidential debate, like hopefully so many others will be. We seem to have counter-programming debate. Last week on our boys episode was during, of course, the presidential debate, and this got scheduled before I realized it was the vice presidential debate. So, you know, sometimes you need something other than politics in your life, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, during the commercial breaks, come over here.
That's it. There you go. You could just sort of jump in and out, back and forth, and, you know, you probably won't miss anything if you're a little long on the debates there anyway. So yeah, actually, I've been really kind of excited to talk about this. Not only just because season 10 seems to have happened literally a lifetime ago before we got our own pandemic. So again, we had such a long break between the season chunk and our finale. For me, it felt a little disjointed, obviously, and I had mentioned that out in my review. But Rob here's actually been binging through the entire season 10, catching up to the big finale. So in some ways, I'm really curious not only how the season felt for you there, Rob, but how that actually blended into the finale. Did that work much more to you since you didn't have to wait so long between when you saw the tower and then when you saw a certain doom? And so I'm sort of curious how the pacing worked for you in that sense. So let's sort of jump into this, because I mean, season 10 was a large season. A lot of stuff happened. We go from the post-barn beheading sort of whole sequence, sort of winter one-off there, to Carol coming back. We have the whole arc of Gamma. We have, you know, Lydia integrating. We have Negan escaping and then reintegrating in with the Whisperers and doing all of that. We've got Dante and his whole betrayal in the middle of the first half of the season. We had the whole cave sequence. So there was kind of a whole lot that happened in this season, even if it sort of doesn't feel like it, again, because everything was sort of stretched and pulled so far out. As Deborah mentioned, it was a horrible long break. So, Rob, I want to sort of toss off to you on this one and sort of get an idea of, you know, what did you feel about the season and how did the finale connect in with that for you, since you got to sort of see it on a more of a consistent basis than the rest of us?
Well, at first, it was weird for me because having opted out, I watched the first episode, the winter episode, when it aired, didn't review it, and then watched nothing else but your reviews of the show. Because I just was like, yeah, I don't really think I need to. I just wasn't. We can go into that later.
You weren't alone in that feeling, Rob. The viewership has dropped. So
yeah. Well, you know, we'll talk about some of those reasons. But so I had a long gap. So Walking Dead was out of my life. I would have people coming up to me all the time, like, hey, because I'm the guy that people talk to about pop culture in this area. Sorry. Sorry that I'm your only option for some of those people. So it was weird getting back into it, getting back on the horse, going, okay, where are we? What are we doing? Whispers, got it. And so it took me a minute to really flow back in. It took like a few episodes. But the pacing kind of was mixed for me as far as the season goes. Because like you said, a lot happened, but they spread it out a lot. And I have less of an attachment to the majority of these characters that they've been trying to introduce at the tail end of, Rick leaving the show and all that, and the beginning of the Whisperer War. So some of these characters, the things that were happening, I didn't really care that much about what was happening. But as far as the flow of it all, whenever it was like Daryl, Carol, Negan, Alpha, Beta, all those things that were familiar with me from the comics and stuff, I really liked the pace of all of that. And then, and I was watching like maybe one or two like a week, and then right here near the end, I kind of sped it up a lot, and I jammed through like the last 8 or 9 episodes really quickly, and so that pace made it feel really quick. And then the finale came, and it did change things a little bit, but I felt like overall, like when you get to this episode that's supposed to be the big finale, it just felt a little. It should have been bigger to me. I feel like it should have been a bigger moment. This end to the war. For me, it felt like there wasn't as much tension as there should have been. I didn't feel it as much. Partially because, with all the news coming out about the show.
Right.
Knowing that there's a Carol and Daryl spinoff. Well, Corey's there, right? To everybody's characters that everybody said, if they die, we riot a few years ago, started that whole thing. We know they're going to be fine. Who else is there for me to care about? When we also know Michonne's taking off, and she took off episodes, like an episode or two before that. So we know she's fine. She's just going off to do her thing. And so I'm like, well, who do I have to care about? Magda and the rest of the group. And you got Eugene, who is fine.
Well, he's been there a while.
All the actors on this show are great, but they're a lot of these characters, I feel like their storylines for a lot of them were already over in the comic book, and they were still around now. And it feels like their arcs were done, and we're just going on further with them, dragging stories out that they're just writing to subvert our expectations. And so I was like, every episode that they still live, I'm like, well, then when they die, it'll be fine, because I already know they're already dead in my brain.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I can even say, even with the finale, and I love the actor. I love his character in Fantastic Beasts, the musician guy. I don't know why his brain. Yes, thank you. I mean, I love the actor. I kind of love the character, but to be honest, when he popped up in the finale, I was like, oh, that's right, you're still around? Yeah. Do you die now? Is this again, I like seeing Fogler. Some of the characters are interesting, but you're right. There's only a handful that we kind of really have connected with. And I think a lot of these secondary characters, you're just waiting for them at this point to just sort of get picked off.
It's and how they handled some of these things that just never sat well with me. And like Sadiq's character really feels like there should have been. I of all the characters that died in this season, his was the most disappointing to me, because he was the sacrifice for Carl, and was Carl died for this character. And so this character, and the fact that he lived through this barn attack and he was having PTSD about it, and knowing what I know from the books and everything, it just felt like they try to subvert the expectations of the book audience, because the regular fans that watch this show, the majority of the people, and I think this is throughout MCU, through Star Wars and everything, that the majority of people who consume these products aren't people that are that familiar with the lore and the backstories or the books or wherever these IPs are created. The actual people that love the thing from the beginning are like this much, and the rest of the fans are like this much. And
they're used to the movies, they're used to the visual presentation. They're not going back necessarily to all the original material it's based off of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just it, fans of the stuff really just want to see what's on the page. And nobody, no, I don't know anybody who ever says, give me the thing that's, show me something different.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can do that for something that's not written, like a Star Wars.
Right.
You can take it in new directions, whether you like what they did with The Last Jedi or not. They were doing something different. It's not written in stone.
Right.
Disney can write their own canon. But it's like if they suddenly changed, like they did change some things in like the Lord of the Rings and stuff, but most of it was pretty, I would say what people expected or wanted,
I think Lord
without
of the
having
Rings may
too
be
many expectations.
I think Lord of the Rings might be probably one of the best adaptations, from book to screen of what storylines worked, what didn't work, trimming the fat, and actually doing a special edition, director's edition,
Yeah.
that was almost a different storyline than the published material. That we're going to get off on Lord of the Rings till right now, but
so when you go back to Sadiq and everything, and this like about him, and then for him to just fall the way he does, especially it felt real like a twist the knife situation, a real nasty move. It felt like this didn't feel like the old days, whereas no one is safe.
mm-hmm.
This felt like how, like, I don't know, like not like Jesus, who the actor just wanted out. This just like it felt like we don't care, like did they forget like that this was the guy who Carl sacrificed for, and is it supposed to kind of still mean that nobody's safe? But it really felt flat that moment, and it ruined the impact for a lot of things that I saw coming for the rest of it, knowing that some characters are going to be fine and some characters aren't. The whole situation at the hospital,
Right.
while it was really impressive to see all the walkers, because I mean, you got a Greg Nicotero's directing this, right? You're gonna get a lot of cool zombies. You're gonna get
It was
lot
a
of
very
great
beautiful
special
giant
effects have
shot.
always been incredible on this show.
Mm-hmm.
I should have felt more tension when they were walking through the crowd of zombies. The only thing I kept thinking was, man, they've gotten lazy with the guts. They were just wearing hoodies with some on there. Their faces
It's
are
just a
uncovered.
little dash now.
Yeah, a
That's
little
all you
dab will
need.
do you, and I never felt like a threat. Like, the zombies don't really feel like a threat to me anymore. The Whisperer War, the cool thing about it was there was people that weaponized the zombies, and that's great. It's great in the book, and they do some cool things here too. But it just never felt that tension from that. I thought that if there had been a real breakdown at the hospital, and
Mm-hmm.
more of instead of just, it felt like one scene of the Whisperers starting to get in, and then that was it. Everybody basically, did anybody die? I don't think anybody really died except for Whisperers. It just didn't feel like that
No,
big of a deal.
the whole kind of escape basically came down to like get them out, and then we had the shot between Rosita and Judith, where or not Rosita, Gabriel and Judith, where for some reason Gabriel was intending to die and not just be the last guy out, which was kind of he went through this whole speech of like, so you're just the last guy out, right? You're not going to stay there. There's no reason for you to stay there.
Yeah, just and it would have been, I would have liked to have seen his death there, because in the book, at least it would have been more heroic of, I'm going to be the last man standing, than his comic book death, which is him falling from a telephone pole, like like a place where he's a lookout, and he falls and his leg is tangled up and he's hanging there defenseless as a horde of zombies comes through and takes him out. And it's like, it's great. It's a great death. But like, if since that was already done, like, this at least would have been a heroic death instead of like, oh no, pathetic, like that.
Yeah, you're just lost.
They throw in the Maggie thing here, with her, her. You said ninja. You know what he made me think of was the guy in Hellboy with the mask, who's always the
Oh,
Clockwork
okay.
Orange guy.
Yeah,
Made me
yeah.
think of that guy for some reason. Just this, like a Ray Park or something, like a Darth Maul or something, like this fancy move guy with a hood.
Well, I mean, it
Um,
was very, very, classic Hong Kong martial arts in the move and the pose. I mean,
yeah,
everything
yeah,
within that. It was that. I think that's why it seemed so off. It was like that seems like a different genre show I'm watching all of a sudden.
yeah.
Was it
Um,
into the Badlands or something?
yeah. Oh, yeah. But the Maggie stuff, like, yeah, we have one scene of no dialogue where she reads the paper that says, everybody's dead.
Mhm.
All people that you knew before you left, they're all, basically a list of everybody that died. And she shows up.
Jesus wanted off the
And
show. I was just
her
thinking
only
of it.
line in the episode is "He's with me," and the rest of it is just looks and stuff that you can tell. Like, I know I listened to your review and I watched the whole thing, and it's like, yeah, it feels so tacked on. They could have filmed this at any point. I have a feeling that they did film it during during COVID, like when they were allowed to film.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sure
this is
that's what they
exactly the
did.
type of 2 actors, 3 actors in a scene,
Yeah,
maybe even just one on camera at a time, and then we can
yeah.
clear off and shoot the perspective. Yeah.
It would take a day.
Mm-hmm.
It would take a day, if that. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but I mean, they gave her nothing, and I think maybe that's on purpose. They don't want to give anything away because that would be taking story away from that they could use to drag out the next bunch of episodes.
Our part of our big 6 coming up next. Yeah.
6 and beyond, although I think Maggie's story is probably not connected with what happens at the very end. I think Maggie's group that she's with is not the same group that Eugene runs into at the end of the story, because otherwise, like, or maybe she just doesn't know that they went to find that group.
Right.
To me, I would like it to be something different than the Commonwealth that Eugene runs into.
Right. No,
Then,
I think it is because she would have been like, hey, we've got helicopters and stuff.
yeah, she still feels a little more like, the way she's dressed, the guy in the ninja hoodie zombie killer. It still feels like a little less, a step up from uncivilized, but not completely civilized. Like, they're not coming from somewhere that is like the show that we were talking about before we aired, Before the World Beyond, like where those people are all dressed to the nines in clean clothes. All right. Maggie still looks like she looked like a female Dr. Grant from Jurassic Park, like she's still out there in it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, all right. Before we keep going on, a couple of things. Deborah here in the chat completely agreeing with the whole Sadiq wasted storyline, which she mentioned the psychological torture he was going through, wanted him to reveal the spy and him to live, but then they kill him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think
just to have it revealed immediately.
Well, I know that's the thing. Dante's like the whole murder and deception didn't even last like another episode. It was you're right. It was immediately discovered, so it was really a complete wasted just loss of character there.
If they had built more tension after that of him going, "Oh God, Sadiq, what happened? I don't know. Somebody got in here and killed him," and played it off at all. But it was just. Then they could have had him knowing there's a spy for Alpha in the midst who could attack at any moment. Just pointing out the big plan and then killing him right away was just kind of really, it was really sad for the character, sad for the actor. That it's the history of what's been going on for seasons now of this show is not knowing what to do with characters that they have.
Well, and that's one thing I'd like to get into is because I know that you're really familiar with the comic storyline on this, and maybe go into some of the differences, because you're right. I mean, it's one thing to have to tell a storyline on screen. It's another thing when you're adapting from a comic, and then you get the question of, do we want to just tell the storyline from the comic? Do we want to do something that's going to surprise people that might be fans of it so they can't automatically spoil things? And, I think when you are sort of creating in amongst a property, sometimes it's good to sort of get your fingers in there and play around and move some things around. And sometimes that can really come up with some great storylines. And sometimes things that are expected or stuff that's wonderfully presented gets undercut because there is that urge to do something different or shock the audience.
Yeah.
So are there any kind of like major points within this, either character wise or story wise, that kind of stand out from a different interpretation from the comics line, either, whether it be the whole, because again, even some of the characters aren't really alive. They're different.
See, they were really forced to do a lot of different things because of how they handled it. Like, let's face it, The Walking Dead was always about Rick Grimes.
Yeah.
And how other characters perceived him and how he interacted with the world and how his interactions with other people changed that world, and how the stories developed around from there.
Right.
So when you kill Carl and you get rid of Rick, you basically destroy a huge chunk of what you can do from the books. And even and one thing that I just have to say that just really felt like another knife twisting was giving. I love this actor. I love him on the show. I'm glad he's like the only Alexandrian still alive is Aaron.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's like they purposely gave him Rick's comic book look, the beard, the hand missing, all this stuff that would have been was in the comics, and that speculation of, well, maybe it's because they didn't know how to make him walk around with this prosthetic all these years. It's like, well, no, you're doing it right now every episode that guy's in.
Yeah.
But differences being like, Carol, of course, dead in the comic, gets to continue, but she's a badass. And it doesn't matter as long as they did something better with the character. She's like one of the few examples of what they did with a character that was weak and made them stronger, made them like somebody you never want to see die. And then Daryl, of course, doesn't even exist.
Right.
So they had to do a lot with these people. So that's where you get stories like the whole cave thing. You get the whole vendetta against Alpha that's different from what Rick would do. Like she killed Henry. That puts Carol on the kill crazy rampage vendetta aspect that's way different than the books, which I really liked. I really, really liked Carol versus Alpha this whole season because Samantha Morton is an unbelievable actress. I think that she did something a little bit different than the comic book, but she brought like real acting caliber to that role. Two mothers with very different value systems, and both of them not wanting to back down, both of them being so stubborn. One thinking she believes her own shit when really she's kind of a lot of a hypocrite, and the other one who will just foolishly at times risk the entire group for vengeance. How many kids does poor Carol have to lose on this show? So I get it from Carol's point of view. And so that whole, like, and then we're talking spoilers, right? If you haven't seen it, like knowing that she's the one who let Negan out. Like even though I knew that already going into this,
that was a beautiful reveal there.
The way it's revealed, I loved that so much because it is classic Carol. And without Rick there to be her foil, because that's who was always in her way, was Rick. When Rick was trying to be a farmer, Carol was taking care of business. And it has never stopped.
Right.
She's tried to clock out, and they, it's like The Godfather 3, they keep pulling me back in. And so what do you expect when you bring Carol back? Do you think she's going to just sit on the sidelines and do nothing? No.
No. Carol. Yeah, Carol is one of my favorite characters. But the moment that she unleashes the Horde and single-handedly saves everyone, what was that? At opening of 5 there against the cannibals.
Yeah.
That was like, when you realize that this nice woman is the one that ends up, killing the girl and burning her body back in the prison, and then goes on this whole self adventure and the whole look at the flowers, Lizzie, and then her arc has been astounding.
Yes.
And you're right, her versus Alpha should be an incredible duo. It's one of the things that actually, in some ways, frustrated me so much is they made Carol weak again so they could give her this self-sacrificey, dowdy arc kind of at the second half, and then in the middle into the second half, which I thought really annoyed me, especially her kind of relationship issues with Daryl. For me, these are two people that have been through so much. She's not going to collapse down under that, and they know they can lean on each other. The fact that they kind of undercut both of those well-established parameters, just so they could give her a little character arc, to me was one of the frustrating parts.
I think you can kind of look at it differently, knowing that while you're watching it and not knowing that she let Negan out. I feel like a lot of her weakness is really frustration, knowing that he could be killing, he should be back at now with her head. Now, every day she's waking up going, where's that head? Getting more and more frustrated. It's like how I feel every day when it's not election day. Okay. Every day. It's here, right? No. Fuck. So I can see her frustration as seeing as weakness. I think it's more like, this could be over, but I have to keep following the rules. I have to try to make up with Daryl because I might have gotten his girlfriend killed, or probably got his girlfriend killed, or not girlfriend, or whatever she is, somebody he cared about. Having to sit there and not be able to do anything is not Carol's strong suit, and so she couldn't let anybody else know either that she let him go. So that's a secret eaten up at her. So I feel like that's one benefit to binging it, is I didn't have to wait those weeks and go through that frustration of watching her week after week feel weak, when really it was, I think, just real frustration on her part. Plus, the thing that is in there that I wished wasn't was the Daryl Carol kind of crumbling of their relationship in there. When you're right, absolutely, him and her, she called him Pookie. Remember, like these guys are like, tight, man. It should take a lot more than that. And, Daryl really doesn't have that many people left either to be this close to.
Exactly.
So, because Michonne's doing her thing. And, I think Judith maybe is the other closest person to Daryl, and she's like 8. So you can't really have that big of an adult conversation with a little girl, even if she does have a samurai sword and and Carl's hat.
Very
true. Substitute for the real thing.
I know that's and that's one of the things that they're forced into doing. We were saying, and I know there's this very deep relationship between Negan and Carl that develops in the comics, that kind of perpetuates through. Or I don't know if it's deep, but there's a definite kind of respect and back and forth that develops, that now, having killed Carl, they've had to work with that with Judith. And I think in some ways that works.
But it's like, to talk about like you were asking me, and I kind of go off on these tangents, we end up going down these rabbit holes. To get back into it, like the whole Negan infiltrating Alpha's camp basically all takes place for the comic in issue 156, one issue.
Really?
Except it's Rick, that he goes out there for Rick. It is Negan trying to prove to Rick, without really Rick knowing, that he's like, I can prove to this, swearing all the way. I love it. Again, AMC, let him say what he wants to say. It's Negan. It's
cable. We're allowed
off the chain. So he goes out there, and I was looking at this and I was going, wow, I felt like it was right away that he does what he has to do. But there is a montage in here. There is a few frames where it shows some progression of time of him being there. The Beta not like right away saying no, not no to this guy, but him proving himself. There is no sex scene, okay, or
They didn't need that.
they
Didn't need it.
didn't need that at all. That was silly. It made her feel. It made me think that Alpha was weaker in the show than in the books because it made her more human in the show by basically saying that, oh, this is for you, but it was for her too.
Mm-hmm.
The Alpha in the books would have never have done this as much as she was feeling affection for him. But literally in this book, she has that moment. There is no Lydia red herring. It's just him and her talking. Hey, I think, oh God, what did she say? She's like, okay, I let them have my daughter. I thought it would make her stronger. I thought there was no other way to live in this world. I miss her so much. I'm not strong. I'm not. And she just breaks down bawling to Negan, like realizing, her to admitting to this guy
Sure.
her failures and her faults. And she comes around, she's like, maybe you do belong here. And he just looks at her, maybe. And literally basically cuts her head off in one freaking slice. Right as he says that, maybe slice. And then just hacks away her head. He's like, but I don't want to be here. And you just see that last frame of him. Wait until Rick sees what I got him. So in one issue, they did what it took them episodes to do. Now,
Sure.
yes, when you have this many, even 16, which isn't, a full regular season of television, like a 22 episode regular season on a network would be. I understand them dragging that out a little bit. You need to create some tension, especially the addition of him helping them attack Hilltop.
Well, especially
showing the knocking down the trees.
When you have Samantha Morton and Jeffrey Dean Morgan, you're like, how long can we just have these two just like read the phone book in the back? Yeah. And that'll, so yeah, there are plenty of reasons to do it. And I kind of like the whole buildup that they had with it. But you're right. All of these sort of make choices of what points you're going to focus on and what points are you going to lose and what stuff gets rushed and what stuff, I don't know, gets an unnecessary musical montage behind it. Because that was one thing this season that really got me. Longtime viewers understand the fact that I don't like a lot of unnecessary music stuff and songs and singing to give us some emotional tie-in. And the great thing about Walking Dead is, for the most part, they avoided it. There was a Beth section where they had Beth singing all the time, but they killed Beth and that stopped. And that was glorious. I'm going to get hate mail for that.
No, that's great. Literally, the end. It's like clicking off the radio as soon as she got shot in the head.
Yeah, but perhaps this is Angela Kang's new showrunner, who I actually like a lot of the changes and depth that she brought into this. It was a sort of a fresh look. Some of it didn't always sort of work with me. But for the most part, I don't mind the changes. I don't mind the change in the storyline. But why did they start adding this, of all things, the emotional tie-in song at the end? Just, I know it's not every episode, but it really felt like every episode.
Yeah, because it's one of the main reasons why I tweeted it, because I wanted to see what your reaction would be to it. Is what is with the music in this? Like, literally, it made me think of Smallville, how every episode ends in some pop song that's popular right now.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even really tie into what's happening. And a lot of times the music would be at the beginning and the end. And
right.
And it felt like every episode. It felt like every episode. And it didn't end, like that new World Beyond show. There's a PJ Harvey song playing at the beginning and it's playing at the end. And, it takes you out of it. It doesn't feel like the universe. That's what it does.
Mhm.
It does not feel like the Walking Dead universe. Now, I know they want to make changes and they want to put a new, set of paint on this thing, but you don't add things that take away from the fact that we're in a zombie apocalypse. Because, like I said, zombies aren't really much of a threat to me, but you got to keep some kind of veneer that there's a threat there. And when you put a song like, "Hey everybody, let's do some working at the fun," you don't need that.
No.
You don't
Now,
need that at all, and it just takes you out of it.
now it can work in universe. I mean, what Dev was mentioning about Luke and his viola. Okay, we've got a musician in there that's maybe adding some things. You can throw that in a couple of times. Burning down the house, leading the zombie horde away at the end. That's perfect. The fact that I think it was the only song they had playing over and over again, because it's the same thing later on. We never hear anything else. There's something kind of perfect. Here's a hit, but it's also the only one you got. So that's the one that's going to keep going over and over again.
And it's the Talking Heads. Okay, it's classic. I could hear that every day, at least once a day.
Sure.
Just about. Not every day, maybe, but
well, yeah. And I think that's one thing what I think maybe when we'll get in, because I would like to sort of touch on World Beyond in a little bit, since we have some kind of linkage. And I think one of the reasons why they had to have the finale out now as opposed to waiting for it like for next year is because they need to link all of these things up in the right way.
Okay, so I'll try to make it quicker than what I'm doing here. Like, with the comic books, a certain doom, that's like what they called the finale, is in the comic books the death of Andrea. And then you have, like we were talking about, a Beta getting killed in the finale. And in the books, it's issues way after that with Jesus and Aaron taking him out, which was very, very cool. And while you can't really, I'll always think of that image of Daryl leaping into his eyes with the two knives.
Yeah.
Knowing what I know, and I know you talked about it too, that fight was really over way too quickly. And it had so many logic problems of, I guess Beta doesn't feel pain. The Jesus kind of motif there.
Yeah.
Like somebody stabs you in the face with two giant knives. I don't care who you are.
There is no toughness that is going to help you pull two knives out of your face.
I know people will just say, well, that's just because of how much of a badass he is. And it's like, no, everybody cries sometimes.
Yeah.
Everybody hurts.
There's brainstem and spinal cord and viscerals and important things that would prevent you from doing that.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of, and when you have the other option that, well, you mishandled Jesus, so now you don't get the guy who can do backflips and jump around Beta like something really fun, instead of that. But again, they wanted to give Daryl that big moment, when really I think it should have gone to Negan, because of him and like how Beta felt about Negan. They were actually closer. They had more interactions, and knowing that Negan's the one who killed Alpha, I would have loved to have seen, some version of Negan doing a slight, Lucille treatment to Beta in the end. But
well, I think what they were playing off of was we had that initial fight between Beta and Daryl last season, ages ago. So I think they wanted to try and play on this rematch thing, and now Daryl just goes ahead and takes him out. But you're right, it undercuts certainly Negan's, because it looks like he's like, I'm the bait. I just get your attention. You knock me over, and then hopefully Daryl will save me before anything else happens. And that was kind of it.
I think I know Deborah was asking me if Gamma was in the comics. If she was, she mattered as much as she did in this. Because to me, her whole, like, Thora Birch was in American Beauty, guys. One of the best.
She's an astounding actress.
And for what? What was this? What was the point of this? Except to save the baby that I don't care about? And give the other guy that I don't care about, the one who's watching the baby, a different look at some of the whisperers, which that goes nowhere too. If she is in the book, like I said, I think her presence is again, it goes to the problem with they don't know what to do with these characters. Why add them if you don't know what to do with them?
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that are from the books, you know that they're if you can drag out storylines about Magda and the guy with the what was that called, the viola, you can do that with Jesus. And Lydia, if any again, nothing against the actress, just like she's the new Carl, she's your Carl, and I wasn't feeling it the whole time, and the weird rescue of Carol at the end was just
Oh
what.
God, I hated that. That was just annoying. Well, again, and again, we know that there's a spin-off show now, so of course we know that Carol's not going to die. Not to think that she, if anybody else, would take a long walk off a short cliff like that.
Like
Yeah, and
Lydia
then
taking the tumble for Carol would have been great. Seeing then the mask fall off of her face, like
right.
the floating mask that you see, would have been more effective if it was Lydia's skin falling off as she helped Carol
Mhm.
survive and gave herself up. Because honestly, what are you going to do with this character? What is it?
Yeah,
Where's it go with her? If
she's
not,
going to be cannon fodder at the beginning of next season.
I hope
We are
so.
done with this character now. We shall move on. She'll
No,
be the new
I have a
Henry.
feeling I have a feeling she'll be in the at the very end. I have a feeling she will last till the end. And not like
Well,
one of those. It just feels like the bad penny that like that just
mhm.
keeps turning up. Like she'll just always be around because you've killed off too many of the younger characters, and you've
Well,
made too many weird decisions with characters that they already had. That like Enid, like poor Enid. Like,
Well, I mean, and I think that's the thing where they have killed off so many is now you start to find off in a way the show has to end because one, the comics are ended. You have no more new characters to come in except ones that you sort of create out of whole cloth.
like Princess.
Uh, yeah. And that's not necessarily going to connect in with characters. Now, I kind of like Princess just because I like the sort of goofy, insane presentation of someone. Yeah. Yeah. See?
She was
Um,
actually way better than I thought she was going to be.
Oh, I think they found a really, really fun sort of interpretation out of just, just someone who is, you need someone who's like, look, this person has kind of lost it. They're seeing reality in a different way. This is paid for. You should see more crazy people like that populating out in the world, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that kind of addition in with the show. But again, otherwise you're running out. You're not going to have those connections in with characters and people that have watched, that have read the comics or understand these things. They're just dying off. So in some ways, it sort of makes sense with the comics ending that there's not going to be any more show, that we're coming up on basically what's going to be the final season. Not to mention, you've lost Rick, you've lost Michonne, you've got Daryl. I mean, I got the shirt with the trio on right here.
Right, the Holy Trinity.
Two of those people are gone. So they're going to go off and do their own little individual movies here because they're tired of you not paying them and taking up all of their time.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk a little bit about where things are kind of going in a sense, because we did have our sort of World Beyond premiere here. And like I said, I did want to touch on that briefly, which kind of is going to stand a little bit in stark contrast to what they've spent so much of the end of last season and this season setting up. Is these people don't have anything, everything is horse, it's bow and arrow, it's so on. That this sort of makes sense along in the apocalypse. The big kickoff for the season, of course, is the satellite fall, which gives the needed technology so that Eugene can fix the radio, and that starts with his whole journey and mission, what's going to end up connecting him with the Commonwealth and stuff like that. But so we're working with this sort of reality of technology falling apart and things going sort of back to basics. And then I watched the premiere of World Beyond. And I don't want to touch on this for too long because I couldn't watch more than 14 minutes of it before turning it off. And part of that is, you mentioned it, their clothes are like current fashion style, tons of different fabrics, different styles. They've got
Makeup.
like videos, they've got trucks, later on you see helicopters and guns and things. And sure, there should be sections of humanity that should be able to use their technology. But it still has to look like you don't have international commerce. You will not have 30 different types of fabric, all of many different styles and things. Everybody should be looking like maybe 1800s at this point. You had mentioned it that Maggie looked a little bit like Dr. Grant. Looks like someone that's been kind of out there. Okay, you got sort of a Western styling to that sort of works. Maybe they could either find these or start. These are the basic rough honed fabrics that maybe a textile group is starting to develop and work with. You should not. I don't know. Do I just want to go on a rant here? I feel like it sort of is.
Go ahead.
It's what turned me off on the show in the instance, not to mention it's just a very CW basic storyline. I didn't get any of the troubles. I didn't, the slang for reals with a Z 10 years after the apocalypse. That's a slang that people are using. You're still calling it hooch. Don't you think it'd be calling it like go juice or, they found your liquor or, and besides, if you're a kid that can brew liquor, that's a skill to develop. That's not someone to get in trouble. At that point, I had to turn it off. Nothing made any sense that this is a year 10 next, and yet right outside their walls, there's armies of walkers. And is this why the show should end? Is this the problem they're going to run into? Is they can't maintain a real world with how it should probably start to develop. So they just want to CW it and basic out and slap on a quick little movies and move on. Is The Walking Dead just rote, boring, repetitive? God, I hate to say it, CW fare at this point.
It's getting there. And this new show definitely, look, some people are going to say that it's been there for a while.
Sure.
All right. And I can recognize enough of the things to say they're not 100% wrong. But with each arc of the book, it was a progression of the world we were seeing. And now with the World Beyond, they jump ahead to, well, this is where we're headed. And so basically where we leave off with our characters, we know that they're headed towards a world that has this.
Mm-hmm.
But and we will eventually see some of our characters actually in clothes,
sure.
clothes, looking like they are part of a new society. It's headed there because it's just everything's eventual, right? We start at the lowest of the low. We're wearing what we had on our backs when we left our house, to finding
they get worn, they get aged. You have to replace it with what you find in drawers. There's no new replacements. Everything is, the slow deterioration.
But one of the things is like the way that they have this show set up, like our characters are like in Washington, D.C. area.
Yeah.
Like, so that's the capital of the country. So you would think, that's not far away from New York. Like, why? The way that they make it look like there's this huge nationwide kind of unit that's all over the place now. Like, I'm sure that probably is going to have something to do with the chopper we've seen and things like that. Maybe the beginnings of that. But it just, they also had makeup on, which really, like, hey, it felt like, because I know it was written by Scott Gimple and somebody else, and it felt like it was again, adults writing for teenagers. I think they know, like, this is the lingo, right? I remember saying for reals. They still say that, right? Um, it,
Well,
if
but in that sense, what is the point then of a zombie apocalypse if everything else is modern and the same? Does it matter what your college troubles are like? If it's like, God, I'm not going to get an A on my test, and my best friend just turned into a zombie. Oh,
Okay,
um,
so I will fill you in on some of the more finer, the bigger points after the 14 minutes that you watched. So yeah,
okay,
they're like the campus colony, right? They are for education. Their whole thing is for education, and some of them are, like the one lady there, who was great on The Americans,
mm-hmm.
is training. I think some of them to survive if the worst happens. You've got Julia Ormond from fucking Legends of the Fall as this, leader of this public that comes in that nobody knows where they're from, but we're supposed to trust them. You
Right,
know,
right.
we're already playing ghost politics, like of people that just show up and tell you what to do. So they're building like that kind of mistrust in a government that doesn't exist
Mm-hmm.
already.
Okay,
Then you got the four kids who are going out there. They go out there to find their dad, and they drag
makes
the
sense.
two,
They kept hitting on that in the first few
they
minutes.
drag the two boys with them, and they keep doing flashbacks of the beginning of this whole thing and what they saw when everything went to hell. And you find out there's so many kind of. Okay, so first, one of the kids, when they first leave, he finds a triceratops horn. And he goes, "Oh, I've been looking for this." He just happens to go out and find this thing, like it, whatever. But there's a
What
flash.
convenience.
The two young girls that are, their mom gets. They keep alluding to what happened to their mom. It had to do with a pregnant woman. This pregnant woman shoots their mother for this truck that they were trying to get into. And like the big surprise is the kid picks up the gun, points it at the pregnant woman, and an explosion goes off, and so does the gun, and she kills this pregnant woman.
Okay.
This is one of the two of the one of the girls that's out there, one of the four kids that's out there. And it just so happens that one of the other kids that's in that group is the pregnant woman's son.
Ah, sure. Of course.
So
Of
of course,
course.
along the way, we're gonna have like, what? You killed a pregnant woman? My mom was pregnant, and it just feels so like,
You're
again, like I
seeing
said,
where all the conflicts are going to start coming together already. Yeah.
yeah, the way that they think that they know what they're doing, and you've got the people that go after them because you need to have the two adult characters do something. And at the very end, you find out that right after they left, the secret non-government whatever people completely bombard their college campus, destroy it, kill everybody there. The zombies are all roaming around, and they're looking for the girl because something happened with their dad, and it's all mysterious. And this is the jumping off point. So there's no more going back to school. The college campus is fucking closed
Okay.
permanently.
Well,
And that's
that
where
was
we
good.
lead off. And it just, if this is where we're headed, then, and I know it won't end, right? We got movies, we got the spinoff, we got 2 more years of this show that we're in right now that they're going to take their time with. Which I don't really understand that, except for, yeah, if they can't film because of COVID, then I understand that. Dragging this out, you're not Breaking Bad, okay? You don't get to split this up into a bunch of seasons hoping that you're going to get Emmys that you've never won, okay? Not this late in the game. And that's not a knock to the show or to any diehard fans. It's just a fact, okay? Most shows don't suddenly start winning Emmys in season 11, okay? So what are we going to see? That's the thing now. All right, if this is where we're headed, what are we going to see? What will the 6 episodes have for us? And I've been trying to rack my brain too, and I have a few ideas. I hope you have a few ideas too. I know
No. That was a perfect transition because because we have our setup, we obviously have sort of an idea of where we're going for. I mean, moving into the Commonwealth is opening up this larger world. We're getting a hint of it in World Beyond here. There's going to be reasons to connect with. They might even use World Beyond to connect in with the Rick movies, so we get all stuff like this. You know, they're playing out all of their chess pieces. So since 11 is going to be the big final season, and what it's going to be 22, 24 episodes, an extended one. So it's like a season and a half of what we're going to have. Jim McClintock here in the chat's filler episodes is what they're expecting.
And also to comment on what he said, it's already worse than Fear. Okay, this episode is worse than any episode of Fear I've seen, and I've seen some bad episodes of Fear. This is a whole nother level of bad. And there's some good Fear episodes out there, so it's not that show's not all bad. I feel like every episode of this show is just going to get more cringy. Thank God it's only going to be 2 seasons, and I don't know how many episodes they plan on doing. 6, hopefully, each.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to get that lucky.
But I think what we want to be looking at here then is maybe giving our transition out. I mean, for one, I don't understand adding 6 episodes to a season. This was your finale. If this is no longer your finale, you can't call it a finale, but everything has ended. The only thing that you have that you can connect on to is you have the Maggie storylines. What's Maggie been doing? Or giving some other sort of Commonwealth sort of little connections, because whatever's going on in Alexandria, the Whisper War is over. All the walkers are gone. They dropped them into a river, so whoever's downstream is going to have to deal with them. And if we're still in the middle of COVID, you have a lot of restrictions for filming. So is this like the 6 stories of what have happened to characters while everything else was going on? Are we going to have like is this anthology? Are we going to see, this is the story of Connie, what happened to Connie in the cave? You know, we'll have another one, Carol's adventures as a pirate on a boat before she came back at the beginning of the season. You know, Daryl and Dog, a hunter's time. You know, I mean, with COVID and smaller people on screen, are we just doing one-offs? And why would we do this and not call it a second season, a mini season 11, and then have a season 12? I don't know, man. Give me the answers, Rob. I'm looking to you.
First thing is, that's a lot of the things you were saying are what I was thinking too. Now, did they film these 6 episodes, or are these just announced?
I don't know, to be perfectly honest. They're not. They're going to be coming out next year.
See,
but I don't know if they've actually shot any of them or not.
See, that right there, if it was in the can, if they were in the can, then I'd first say, why are you waiting till next year? The whole one of the hugest bases of AMC was to have Walking Dead year round.
Right.
And they've already gone a long time without it. Now, maybe they're just saying, well, we've already gone this long without it. What's a little more time? But if they were in the can, I'd say you need to start airing them like around Christmas. Not wait till next year. If they're not even filmed yet, there could be chances that they might even go back on that 6 episodes and say, well, that was what we were going to do. But like a lot of movies and stuff, a lot of people had plans. Dune was supposed to be out in December. Now it's not coming out till late next year. Okay?
Right.
So there's no reason to think that they might not just pull those 6 episodes and say, yeah, we can't really do it. COVID. Wah, wah. So, but if they do release those 6 episodes, what would they be? And there is a good chance that you're right, that it would be one-offs. Just telling somebody's story. Would that be worth it? Not if they go the way you're talking about it. No way. No way. Connie's escaped from the cave for 40 minutes. Although it'd be a great concept episode because it would be seen from a deaf perspective. That would be interesting. But is that something that people, like diehard fans of that character and people that will die for this show will love that?
Mm-hmm.
But people that have been waiting for a really long time will go, "That's it." Um, and would it be all Maggie stuff like Clinton 80 here is saying? I could see that too. I think that there's a bunch of like, so that if we're not going to tell the Commonwealth story yet, we're not going to get to that till the actual season starts,
Mm-hmm.
then I could see them showing Carol and Daryl and Maggie's reunion and finding out what everything was going out there with her and that group that she was with before we meet up with the Commonwealth.
Right.
I would, and that wouldn't feel like filler. It would feel like we're filling in the gaps. Um, because I mean, look, I don't even think we would have a Maggie storyline if her show had failed, right? If Whiskey Cavalier was still on, this wouldn't even be, we wouldn't even be discussing what we'd be doing about with Maggie.
Right.
Um, so if we do 6 episodes with Maggie, and what's the person's name that she went with? Is it Frankie or
Oh God.
the older lady who looks like D-list Helen Mirren?
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. There's too many names. I'm old at this point. I
Yeah.
can't. If I don't have them written down, I can't remember everything.
Lauren Cohen confirmed it.
The show has aged me. Jim McClinton 8 is mentioning that Maggie. They're shooting Maggie episodes right now. Lauren Cohan confirmed it. So
Okay. Well, if that's the case, right? Then, like I said, we were talking about before we were filming that it would be. On one hand, you can see them wanting to wait to do this episode because it's a major. It would be a major important episode. But if you really want people to tune in, you have to do the Solitary Life issue of The Walking Dead, which is issue 174, which is the final appearance of Negan in the comic book, other than a brief mention at the end and before his Negan Lives book, where it's the confrontation by Maggie to Negan after all this time, dealing with what he did to Glenn.
sure.
And it's a very important issue for both characters because at some point here, Negan leaves. There's no place for him. They will never fully trust him no matter what he does, which is feasible.
Sure.
And so in that story, she goes out there to kill him. And I mean, I guess spoilers, not if nobody wants to know, but I mean, I won't spoil it. All right. I won't spoil it, but a really, really emotional story for both would be amazing for Lauren Cohan and for Jeffrey Dean Morgan. This would be a phenomenal ish episode. People would be so glued to their television that they would probably get some of the highest ratings they've ever had for this episode. So in those 6 episodes, I think that would be a must to keep people's interest. Plus, it would also possibly free up Jeffrey Dean Morgan to do, if they want to keep this show going, right? Like do the Negan spinoff.
Well, I mean, they're definitely going to integrate him. It would be a fool to let Jeffrey Dean Morgan go, and especially Negan, even though in some ways his appearance was part of the end of Walking Dead in many ways, but that has nothing to do with his performance in any way.
No, that just comes down to people being wussies.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes you can push things a little too far, I think, and overly shock people. But regardless, that would make sense, especially if they were setting up an 11 where we're going to start moving into these different worlds, and that's going to open the Commonwealth. So we want to open up all of our survivors into that possible world. Well, either they'll die fighting for it, or could pop up in our movies or spin-off series or anything like that. So yeah, I guess if they did focus a little bit on, because, well, I mean, really, since we have Maggie showing up at the end of the finale, one shot that we didn't see is, of course, the big shot when Maggie turns around and there's Negan standing right there. We didn't see that shot. but it's going to happen because they're all right there. So there's going to have to be that confrontation that you're talking about. And there's kind of no way to avoid that unless, Negan's like at the edge and sees her and is like, she's still mad at me. Maybe I should go hide in that little cabin where I cut off Alpha's head and just, till she sort of settles herself down. That would sort of make
back that she would have towards Carol and Daryl, letting him loose. Like that. Remember before Rick's departure, their whole coup d'état they were basically planning.
Right.
That for do we know how that really left? How was that really left with Maggie? I mean,
well, no, didn't Maggie have that one scene in the jail, or did that? Didn't she have a face-off with Negan already and not kill him?
Really? Did they already do that? Because if they did, then if they really did already do that, then there might not even be a point to this. And that would be a huge mistake if that, I start to think you might be right about that.
No, because she didn't kill him. She wanted him to suffer and stay inside of that jail cell and so on. So it wasn't so much of like an I forgive you, if I remember, but it was more of one of those lines where I'm not going to kill you.
Yeah.
Again, I'd actually have to go back and rewatch if anyone in the chat remembers. But anyway, so I guess
it would be kind of the last chance for them to do some really weird stuff.
Right.
Because once you get into the Commonwealth story, you're dealing with the show becomes kind of more Game of Thrones than anything dealing with like walkers and stuff. It's more dealing with people backstabbing, treachery, places looking too good to be true, two groups that don't know each other, not trusting each other, some people changing sides, some people being like, oh, I love this place. Some people saying, no, we're better off with themselves. You've got people that look down on our group. You got people that want to, leave the place. There's a lot more intrigue and less horror.
It becomes a different story ultimately, where the walkers are just the background.
Yeah, it's going to lean towards more world beyond than our current predicaments that we're in. So these 6 episodes might be the last chance for them to go nuts. Like maybe figure out what to do with, maybe there's like some remnants of the Horde left or things like that.
Well, you're right. I think there was a few moments where, I mean, you had touched on it earlier on the discussion about the big Horde shot at the end of the finale, but you never really got, that sort of fear of moving through it. They're just do a couple little dabs of blood now and put on a hoodie and you wander all out. They did do one little shot, which I really wish they had stuck with longer, when Kelly went out and she had the mask on and they did that sort of first person perspective with no sound of moving through the Horde. And to me, that would have been something so much more interesting when they opened up the door, that you move into someone's perspective as the door opens up and you see the crowd out there. I mean, obviously this would be expensive and, you've got your bigger shots you'd have to do. And I don't even think they did that so much in any of the cave sequences, was really put you in the middle of that claustrophobic terror at any moment. Someone could pop up with a knife feel. And while I loved a lot of the sequences with it, I thought that was something they really missed out. They like touched on briefly this cool idea and then never came back to it. And that would be kind of some fun stuff that you could deal in with this, I think. Especially you could mask up all of the walkers, then put the makeup on them, and then just do a single person camera perspective through the crowd. You could make it COVID safe even in a crowd, I think. Just an idea.
No. They could, while you were saying that, it has made me wish that we could if we were going to do weird stuff, like maybe tell stories that they never told, like stories of them surviving out in the middle of nowhere. But you'd have to, like, could you, like maybe get some of the old actors to replay those, roles where they put them in a crazy situation. Like, because I remember a lot of people had talked about like seeing the show in winter time. And yeah, we had that one winter episode, but that was real weak. But like
Yeah.
experiencing things for the first time, some of our old characters. I don't know if anybody would be willing to come back. Because I think you could suspend the disbelief on a lot of this stuff and just bring people in. Like this was a scene, an episode where in between like 3 and 4 or 5 and 6 or something, where you could get Abraham and everybody else to just show up and do some crazy random stuff. I don't know.
So I'm getting knocks on my window here, so I'm having to say hello to my daughter. Yeah. I'm sorry. I also got distracted. Deborah here in the chat is mentioning about Fear. Dwight and Morgan is carrying Fear with Alicia. She's awesome, which is true. Fear took a turn after Nick was killed off or after the zombie tornado. Yeah, that's exactly what. Once you killed Nick, I was done. And then I was like, I'll try a little bit more. And I saw the zombie tornado and I was done.
Yeah, I thought that might have been where you turned off. Like, I remember your video for that. That is one of the best stopping a show reviews I've ever seen, where somebody just like, I'm out.
Yeah. No, I couldn't express it. I couldn't have expressed it any clearer. I think
your emotion in that video was priceless. So I really, it's really hard to say then what they're gonna do, because if unless they want to just go right into the Commonwealth and just jump right in, because they're gonna milk it for all it's worth, no matter what.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say though is that your idea of like if they wanted to go and bring any actors back, if any other actors wanted to come back, fans would eat that up in a heartbeat. If we could see some people that had passed away and can now come back. You get a Merle episode. You want a Merle and Daryl episode. Doesn't even matter that they both look, age inappropriate in it. People will eat that up.
Put them in fun where it's safe for the characters, because when they die, and just put them in insane situations. Put them in stuff that we haven't seen before. Throw whatever at the wall. Like one of the most standout issues and that started the whole winter, we want to see the winter stuff, was really early on when they get to a community that seems great. It's gated. It's snowing. They need to get out. And then they get into this place and they realize that they're surrounded by zombies under the snow, and them having to haul ass out of there. It was, you have these ways to show these little things of how our characters dealt with things back then that we never saw before. Or, just surviving on the road, good character stuff. You could, just get some good writing, get some good stuff that fills in gaps. It'd be like coming home again, like, and building on that nostalgia towards this last season of, remember when you didn't complain about The Walking Dead being stale?
Remember back in the day? I remember
that, but nicer than that. Yeah, you could have, you could bring, there's some actors that died, you would have to work around Herschel, the actor who played Herschel, who passed, but, John Bernthal's not the Punisher right now, show some crazy, stuff between him, like with him and whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's all pipe dreams and rabbit hole stuff. What's that?
Yeah. I was going to say, it doesn't matter that he looks 10 years older. We'd still eat that up. No, just give us Shane.
It doesn't matter what any of these actors, they're not so old or long in the tooth that you got to pull a Marvel de-aging on any of this. But that's, like I said, that's pipe dreams. What I think what's going to happen is if they do the 6 episodes, it'll be filling in the gaps of Maggie's story and the group that she's with, and possibly still dealing with, maybe they'll just kind of forget what she said to Negan in the prison and be, just kind of redo it again, I guess. Maybe make it a little bit bigger, a little bit broader, I don't know.
I think they definitely have to have a confrontation, because again, even if they did have that, he was in jail and this was years ago, and now, whole different things have sort of changed and gone on. If she's turned around and he's walking around like, hey, how's it going, Maggie? Long time no see. they can't just brush that off. But yeah, I think if they did do some like little, maybe the anthology idea would be the best thing they could do for these little episodes. Like I say, go off, give us something really interesting that doesn't have to tie in, but can just be a good, interesting background story. And maybe something happens there that you can play with down the road. They find a thing, and that
have
thing
some big
gets
adventures, like a big adventure episode where just heads getting lopped off, and we're surrounded, but we're around our badass group of people. But then that would involve probably bringing Rick in, and I don't think Andrew Lincoln, he's still. But
no, because
have to have that. You could even have smaller characters that went to that are dead more recently, like Tara and Enid and people like that could come back for something.
Right. There's a whole time when Tara was running Hilltop there were certain things that could have gone on. There were time jumps that they had where they could play with little moments during that.
Show what Alexandria was like before all this, or show Hilltop what it was like before all this, before Rick's group got there.
Mm-hmm.
You could show the rise of Gregory. I don't know.
Right. Well, I think ultimately, whatever they do these, while it might be sort of a fun little play, I think they would have to at some point do these for a reason. If they're going to do an anthology thing, it wouldn't be just to do a one-off episode to fill in time, especially if they're saying that it's not its own little mini season that still is connected to season 10. I think it easily has to sort of tie into what's happened, or like I say, they find some MacGuffin or get some piece of information that then next season they can go, hey, you remember 2 years ago when we had that big adventure and we found that one little note and it mentioned this thing? I think it's talking about this stuff over here we just ran into,
Did we ever get a proper answer to the A's everywhere or whatever that we would see? Or was that all dealing with the cannibals?
Yes. No, that was that was tied in with was that Sanctuary? No, that wasn't Sanctuary. That was the previous war, which was it was that on Negan's war? Oh, God, that was a couple seasons ago. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm brain deading. I think they did.
Yeah.
I think that was connected in with something that we was that the trash people. All right.
Yeah,
obviously,
I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt your brain too hard there.
Little brain
things that could connect, that would give some kind of greater connection to the story. Because otherwise it'll be as big a surprise for any of us then. But I always think every time I go big, they usually simple it down. And for me, the simplest explanation would just be telling the story, the gap between, like, maybe a lot of this is what, the whole group that Maggie's with, like literally all that time, what happened to her. Forget Carol and Daryl completely and just show her journey from leaving Hilltop to coming back to Hilltop. In 6 episodes, meeting some new characters, a way to introduce characters that we're going to see in the final season. That way they're not just dropped in our lap. And hi, care about me, maybe, give us 6 episodes to maybe build a little character. Rather than, like I said, because I don't really feel anything from Magda and any of the other characters. I like Kamiko. I'm not Kamiko. Yukio or Yumiko. Yeah, it's Yumiko. I like Yumiko just fine. But I still feel like, for a lot of our characters, it really took a long time to build the relationships that we have with them.
Right.
Carol wasn't always badass Carol.
Oh, no. I was surprised she had survived as long as she did. Those first couple of seasons.
Yeah, so we need a little more time with some of these people if we're going to care. And if this is a good way to introduce that group, then tell those 6 episodes. Tell us those 6 episodes. Plus, it gives the rest of the group a break. that kind of thing. I really do. Now that I'm really thinking about it, I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah. Well,
For
and it would give us the background that we would need for what I'm assuming again with 11 is going to be their transition to the larger world. They want to introduce the Commonwealth, connect this group onto it, have their little Game of Thrones stuff, and then go, great. Now the next Walking Dead iterations are going to be what's going on in this big larger world, and that's when you can have your Rick movie telling the corner of what's happening here, and then your Michonne movie looking for Rick, and then your Daryl and Carol series looking for Michonne and Rick. However, they're going to connect this up. Also, Jim Clinton 8 also mentions Jada's talked about the A's and B's when she was recruiting, and that's one of the things when she was describing Rick, A and B's and such like that. So I think that is our connection there. Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything. We're hitting almost on the 90-minute point, so I think we've covered enough. I know we didn't talk so much about individual episodes for this season, but I think it was bigger just talking about how it worked, how we feel about the season. We definitely had some comments agreeing us in the chat that the finale just felt a little disjointed. And I think you're right. I think the urge, once you killed off Alpha a couple of episodes prior, and then you had the sort of like dead time of Beta's whole story, and then you had to have the finale, I think it just sort of dragged everything off. And you're right. I don't think we got the big fight standoff that all of us were expecting. Maybe if Beta had gotten away and we could have had in this anthology the hunt for Beta in one of the episodes, that
because in that issue it's them hunting down the rest of the Whisperers. We could still see something like that. That some of them got away, and it's just this merciless hunt for them. Like there's no like you find a Whisperer, you take them down kind of thing. Like
right.
Even the ones that are like, I don't know if we should be doing this anymore. Too late. Like
you wear the mask, then you pay the price,
Yeah.
You could have the shot like, what was it, the end of Tombstone when the cowboys pull off their bandanas. You can have Whisperers like pulling off their heads and running down away.
Yeah. Like pulling off their mask. I'm done. Too late.
That's right.
You had your chance.
As long as they get Carol back to being smart, I'm going to be happy. Both Dan and Jim Clinton here mentioning not liking the whole Carol arc this season. So in the dumb stuff she was doing, like I said, I didn't like that little kind of mini arc there. But I think overall, a fair season, certainly not the worst. I think they wrapped up the war pretty well for the most part.
I was really surprised that I did like as much of it as I did. It's not as bad as season 2.
Oh God.
Which I still think is the worst, but of all the seasons. But and I guess a lot of people really hated 8. Or was it 7?
I think it was 7.
7.
8.
Because people didn't like seeing our group on the boot heel of Negan for a whole season. Like 7 and 8 are probably a lot of people's least favorites. 2, 7, and 8. This is better than 2, better than 2. I happen to actually really like 7 and 8 because I don't mind seeing a fall to rise.
Sure. Sure.
But that's because I'm into long form books. I'm used to like reading an issue at a time every month. So I've been trained for this kind of torture. So I can get why people in the, that don't read the comics are like, when you're not used to that kind of mental preparation that you need for it. But yeah, this was a lot better than I thought, even though a lot of things, they're like we said, Sadiq and plot lines that don't really go anywhere, and whether you liked Carol's arc and things like that. But with actors like Samantha Morton and Ryan Hurst, And Thora Birch, like I said, even though it went nowhere, there was a lot to like in this season, more than I thought I would. I'm still glad I didn't review it, because I hate reviewing things and being more critical than praiseworthy.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I watched it in the end, and more than just watching it so that I could talk with you about it. I'm glad that I watched it in general.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it did have its ups and downs. I think the stuff that worked really worked. I think the stuff that didn't work wasn't necessarily bad, but annoying and frustrating. Like it was just sort of a wasted moments. And I think the frustration came out maybe from that point, as opposed to just something that was just stupid. Except, of course, for the music, which we have touched on before. Please stop doing that. We don't need the emotional tie-in music at the end of an episode.
Yeah, it's not Dawson's Creek.
So we've got 6 more season episodes that will be coming up sometime next year. Then we've got a big extended season 11. That's going to be the end of The Walking Dead. You will simply be forced to watch some of the continually decreasing in quality spinoffs that AMC will be pushing off until the walkers just eat the channel completely.
It was a real zombie apocalypse that attack. They won't even know that they're being attacked by zombies because they'll still be filming. And hey, why is he really biting that lady over there?
That's right. The last shot is just going to be some shot and then the camera kind of panning up and Walker's just moving over it and then just screened into black. And that's how
that would be the most meta moment in history, of literal history, would be the show eating itself.
Yeah. I think that's the way to go. AMC, that is your end shot right there. That's how you do it.
Yep. Cut. They show a cut and then like, hey, wait a minute. Ah! Oh my God, that would be brilliant.
All right, so we've got how it's going to end, and I think that is the perfect point for us to end now. Thank you, everyone who joined us in the chat that escaped out from the vice presidential debates, or if you're not in the U.S., lucky you. But this will be the end for us. Thank you so much for joining us live. Rob, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
You can find me on my channel on YouTube, Smirking Gun Reviews, where we're doing old Shield new reviews, Lovecraft Country, all sorts of stuff coming on the channel. On Twitch, at Smirking Gun Plays, all one word. We're always playing games on there. Probably be playing on there right after this. And then on Twitter, you can find me at Reviews_Gun, where I'm still losing my mind.
Excellent. And of course, you can find me right here, D's Reviews, where we are just wrapping up Fans of The Boys next week because it's a big final episode. You can catch, of course, myself, Rob here, and Don Willie talking about that. Then the trio of us will be continuing on at the end of the month with The Fandalorians as The Mandalorian Season 2 drops. And then next month, we will be starting our season look back reviews of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, of course, kicking us off next month. What is our favorite episode? What doesn't work for us? What did we really like? It's going to be a big, long, extended discussion covering all of the season and just how awesome that show is. If you've been missing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., definitely you want to come and join us for the return of Fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. next month. But that is going to wrap us up for now. If you did watch this, please press that like button. Hit the subscribe. If you're not subscribed, hit the bell notifications, let you know whenever new reviews are being dropped. And with that, we're going to go ahead and say goodnight. Thanks, everybody. I am D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.